Good afternoon and welcome to the August 29th meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority. Roll call, please.
Authority members: Agajanian.
Present.
Garpetian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Razian.
Here.
Sinanian.
Here.
Chair Devine.
Here. Next item.
Agenda for the August 29, 2017 regular meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, August 24, 2017 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Next item is approval of minutes.
I'll move for A.
Second.
And hearing no objections, the minutes stand approved as submitted. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communication. No cards were submitted for this portion.
Thank you. Next.
Authority member and staff comments.
Do we have any?
I have questions for staff. There's a system that we have, right? We have folks who come in and are interested in low-income housing who actually sign up for it's an informational sheet where every time there's a unit available or a complex that becomes available for low-income housing, they're to be notified so they can participate in the lottery system. Is that correct? How does that work? Can you explain, is that automated? Who makes these phone calls? I mean, obviously the phone calls have to be made. Are they automated? Are they robocalls? How does that work?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the Housing Authority. There are two ways in which people who are interested in affordable housing opportunities can place their name on what we're calling a affordable housing interest list. They could come in person to the Housing Division and complete a form and turn it in, or they can go online at the Community Development Department's website under the Housing Division and fill one out electronically. Depending upon how they fill out that form will determine how they get notified of a future affordable housing opportunity. If they do not have an email address, then a future notice will go out via hard mail. And we tend to see that happen with a lot of seniors that are not internet savvy. Those that submit the form online, nearly all, 99% of them, have email addresses attached to that. So for those people, when we do a mailer, those that have no email address will get one physically mailed to them. Those that have an email address listed will have that notice mailed to them electronically.
So there's no phone notification system?
It'd be virtually impossible. There's over 10,000 people that you would have to try to call.
So do we make sure that there's enough time between the time of the notice being mailed and the time that I guess it would be an application deadline? That would be
yes.
The next thing. So there's enough time for folks to be able to react to that notice? It
would be. Yes, we make plans to make sure that they get notices in advance of an opening, not midway through an opening or towards the end of an opening, which we think would be ridiculous.
What's our desired goal of how much time we want to give them?
Typically try and give about 2-week window advance notice. If you do it sooner than that, or if you do it more than 2 weeks, I think people tend to forget, misplace their mail, things like that. So you want to try and keep it current. So we try and make it about a 2-week to 10-day advance of when something would be opening up.
So in a situation where it's not a major project, like, for example, God be willing, we succeed with 5th and Sonora, obviously that'd be a big application process and folks would apply, there'd be a lottery. But in those instances where units become available, for example, in an existing project and there's no waiting list anymore, I guess that's when these notices would kick in, correct?
Correct. More so on the large-scale projects, if the Park Paseo down the street senior project was having, where they're regenerating a new interest or waiting list for their project, something like that would generate a mass mailer of something like that. If we have one particular landlord call and say, I have a unit that would like to be affordable, we wouldn't necessarily do a mailer for something like that.
How would you treat that one?
We would ask them to give us some information. We'll put it at our counter. We'll send it out internally.
I'm sorry. So if a landlord, so in an existing building, a unit becomes available, there's no waiting list to sort of go down, you would not send out a notice? I'm trying to understand how that would work.
So if we have a landlord simply call and say, I have a unit that I want to rent, and I'm going to rent it at an affordable rate. So we would simply do something internally, send it out to the various departments and let them know, and then ask the landlord to give us information. We'll post it at our counter and put it on our Section 8 list that Section 8 participants who are out there looking for a unit will say, do you have a list of units that are available? I can go out and try and secure something. Those are just market rate projects in which an owner calls and tells us that. If it's an affordable housing project that's restricted with funding that we've put in at one point in time, we would default to the development agreement we have with them and the management plan and what the process is to fill vacancies.
And those plans are different for different buildings?
I think over the 30 years, you'll see that the plans are all different. And when we can, we try and renegotiate and update plans to make it a little bit more current and reflective of some of the procedures that we have now in place that tend to work.
So if such a plan does not provide for is there a plan in existence that doesn't provide for a lottery when there's no waiting list?
No, they all typically have waiting lists. It's just the manner in which the information gets distributed out to the community might be limited in some of the smaller projects versus much more broader in the larger projects.
And how would it be limited? I'm asking all these questions because we get asked all these questions. I get asked all these questions, and sometimes I don't have answers. I want to have as many as possible. So, how is a plan limited? Is it geographically limited? Is it?
No, it's simply by size and scope of the project and the ability for the developer to do and perform some of these types of mailings. Okay. So it's a very small project, limited financing by us, but some restrictions. The unit needs to be rented fairly quickly, and it's an easy process to turn over. Then typically those types of management plans call for a very limited type of marketing process.
And what is it? What would that be?
It could be simply coming back in, as I indicated earlier, coming in and submitting flyers to us that we can put at our counter. We typically send flyers to the city manager's office and let staff know in the CM's office of when there's an opportunity.
Okay.
And then it's filled that way.
Okay, so that puts the onus on individuals who are interested in low-income housing to actually periodically come in, and sometimes they may get lucky and hit one of these.
Yeah, but I don't want to give the impression that there are a number of opportunities that are being missed by residents. They're very small projects, and I'd say probably one or two a year might follow that type of process. Okay. They tend to get filled by the end of the day. And for those types of projects, I would refer to density bonus projects that got approved some 20-some years ago. A very limited marketing process for that. I would say all of the major projects that have multiple funding sources have a more broader outreach plan that really gets the information out to the community.
Yes.
No.
Did you have a question?
If you're done.
For now.
Thank you. And if I can add then, prior to large projects like that opening up again, we do come before the Housing Authority and make announcements in advance as well as to the mailings that we do through that interest list. So any future opportunities of these larger projects, you'll receive that update from staff. Actually, we plan coming back in September for one of the density bonus projects that are looking to be ready to start a marketing process for their affordable units.
Okay. Mr. Agajanian?
You're done? I just want to make sure that I understand this right. So those who come to meet us here in the city hall, and then we take their name, the staff taking their name and address and phone number. So if there is an opportunity, we are not sending no letter and we are not calling them. Am I right?
No, if I understand your question correctly. Both within the housing division, on the internet, and from the city manager's office, we get entries on our affordable housing interest forms. When we get that, we input it into the computer system, and we generate a mailing list and or email list for future projects. So they do eventually get something, yes.
They get through the mail. I'm not talking about the email. Forget about the email.
Yes. So if if they don't have an email address listed, they will get something in the mail telling them about a future opportunity.
That's what I want to know. So they will be notified through the mail if they don't have email address.
Correct.
They will get something because anytime they come and meet me, one of the staff members, they take their name, number,
Right.
and address. So just want to make sure
Right.
those are.
Those come to
Yes.
me. I just received about 8 of forms about 20 minutes ago, and I gave them to
Right.
the person for inputting.
All
And
right.
all the email entries that get placed online, when someone submits it, they come to me, and then they get forwarded into the system.
Okay.
So I see those that come through.
Okay.
And I just want to make a clarification as well that I think we're talking about two different issues here. One is the larger projects that are coming up. You will notify everybody, 10,000 people on the list, way ahead of the time, maybe 1 or 2 notifications that this project is coming up and let them know that they can participate. And the other one is maybe a landlord calls and says, I have a unit and I want to, I'm willing to rent this as a low income to a Section 8. You don't do that for that one unit. You just find a person with a voucher that is looking for such a unit. You notify them or you find them to occupy these units.
Correct,
Because
correct. We
the
place them-
process is too long and it's too hectic for 1 or 2 units to send notices to everybody. So just want to make that clarification.
Correct. Correct. And remember, they're saying, I want to rent to a Section 8 tenant. So in that particular case, we would place it on the Section 8,
Section 8 list.
list of rental listings that people will then occasionally come in and say, I'm moving. Do you have a list I can refer to of a landlord that takes or is interested in taking Section 8?
Okay.
Thank you for the
Councilmember
clarification.
Najarian?
So let me ask sort of a related question, Peter. Let's say I'm a landlord or a property manager of a building that has a density bonus. Let's say it's a 10-year-old density bonus building, 15-year-old. And one of my low-income tenants moves out, passes away, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is the burden on me to notify the city that I have the vacancy? What's to keep a unscrupulous management company from just renting it out to anyone at market rate and not saying anything? Do you have the staff to follow up and monitor those density bonus units, or is the burden on the management company to inform you? We're trying to find affordable housing in all corners and make sure that density bonuses, buildings that were awarded that extra story, reduced parking, et cetera, extra density bonus as well, are living up to their end of the bargain.
Correct. So all of our projects have a monitoring aspect to it. And there's 2 components to that monitoring. There's the developer monitoring themselves and the requirements that we place onto the project for them to do that. And then there's a staff member in the housing division that's responsible for monitoring. And that monitoring will consist of annual inspections of a certain number of units every year to make sure that the units are being kept up to code. The project itself, it's monitoring of the tenants that are placed in there and are declaring themselves as low-income tenants, so it's monitoring their paperwork. And then it's monitoring vacancies, either as they occur, in which they need to give us contact us and let us know when they do have a vacancy, and then monitoring of waiting lists for different projects. So in your example, a developer simply can't just have a vacancy and then say, I found on my own a low-income tenant that I've moved into the project. What we would do is require them to notify us that they have a vacancy, and then we would work with them in reviewing their waiting list for their project to determine who's the next eligible person that should be considered for occupancy there. And so all these projects tend to have their own waiting lists that set the order of who the next tenant should be. So if we were to come out in an annual inspection and say, well, what happened to Mr. Smith in Unit A? Well, Mr. Smith moved out. And so how did you replace them? How come you didn't notify us? Who's living there now? We would look to say the next person on the waiting list that we have of record is Mrs. Gray. Mrs. Gray should be in there. But prior to moving in there, then we'd go to the developer. Prior to moving in there, though, Mrs. Gray should have come to us and provided us the income documentation so we can verify that, yes, they should be able to qualify to move in there. So we do have a monitoring aspect that looks at all of those types of issues and addresses it.
Thank you.
You did say that if this unit comes available all of a sudden, that it's gone in one day. Right, correct?
Correct.
Is that usually because you find someone or you go to the list, or is that because they just happen to walk in and there it is available and they get it?
It's a little bit of both.
Both?
Yeah. Yeah. Word will spread fast. And those are more, again, those are more of the projects that don't necessarily may have any restrictions or requirements through us. It's just someone out of the goodness of their heart saying, you know, I just want a low rent for someone that's really a good tenant. Those tend to go quick, very quick.
Okay.
Versus the ones that say, I want to list to a future Section 8 tenant, put me on that Section 8 list, versus this general affordable housing interest list that will go citywide.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Mr.
Are we at the
Thank you.
comments section now?
Yes, now, any other comments?
I want to just mention that I had the pleasure of speaking at the groundbreaking of Lomita Homes last Saturday. This is 6 single-family homes, another project by Glendale Housing Authority as with Habitat with Humanity. And I want to congratulate everyone, our housing team, as well as Habitat and the 6 lucky families who received those single-family homes. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Kasakian, do we have any pictures? I thought I submitted some pictures of council because we were all there except for Ms. Prozzi, and I'm sorry that you couldn't make it. But this is our 9th.
Wasn't notified by the...
Oh, so this is our 9th Habitat for Humanity build in Glendale. There we all are, digging in. It will be 6 homes for 6 wonderful families. They are all 3-bedroom units. And it was quite a glorious morning. As I said, great parents. And we're so lucky that we have this partnership for 22 years with Habitat for Humanity, and look forward to the ribbon cutting for this Lomita community. Thank you.
Madam
yes.
Chair, just one more comment.
Mr. Sananian.
Just noticed Jack Tarakchan in the audience, who's a champion of low-income housing for persons with disabilities, both physical and cognitive. Happy birthday, Jack. That's it.
Okay, happy birthday. Thank you for your work. Okay, what's the next item, please?
Just a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
We are adjourned, 3:25. Thank you.